"Have a good rest, Mama," my son said with a strange smirk, sending me off on the trip of my dreams. I was walking toward the shuttle bus, already tasting the vacation, when my neighbor, whom I had once helped out with some money, stopped me. She was breathing hard and whispered, "Lucille, do not get on that bus. Come to my place, quickly. I found out something terrible." Hello, dear friends. Before we open the doors of this old house and uncover its secrets, I ask you for one small favor. Subscribe to the channel and like this story, and write in the comments which city or state you are listening from. It always warms my heart to see how many of us there are. Now get comfortable. Happy listening. I stood in the hallway of my apartment, looking at the suitcase that Darnell had packed himself. That was odd. Usually my son did not trouble himself with such care. Darnell rarely troubled himself with anything that did not concern his personal comfort or his next genius idea for getting rich quick. "Well, Ma, why are you frozen?" His voice sounded cheerful, too cheerful. It rang with that fake note I had learned to distinguish back in his school days when he hid his report card with failing grades. "The shuttle leaves in 40 minutes. The Uber is already downstairs." I shifted my gaze from the suitcase to my son, 35 years old, a handsome, striking black man in an expensive suit bought with my money. Over the last 10 years, I had paid for 3 of his startups. First, it was a coffee shop that closed in 6 months because Darnell decided that renting a space downtown would pay for itself. Then, a cryptocurrency mining farm that burned down along with the wiring in the garage. And finally, a sneaker resale business that had to be sold to cover debts. I am Lucille Mercer, the former chief financial officer of a large manufacturing plant. All my life, I have dealt with numbers, balance sheets, debits, and credits. Numbers do not lie, people lie constantly, and my personal balance sheet with my son had been deep in the red for a long time. But I paid. I paid because he was my only child. And perhaps, somewhere deep in my soul, I hoped that one day the quantity of invested funds would transform into quality of character. But I was never blind. Next to Darnell, shifting from foot to foot, stood Keisha, his wife. Usually, this woman looked at me with poorly concealed arrogance, considering my advice old-school nonsense and my apartment her future inheritance. But today, Keisha was studiously studying the pattern on the wallpaper. She avoided my eyes. Her fingers nervously picked at the edge of her designer handbag. "Here, Ms. Lucille." Keisha handed me a folder with papers, never looking up. "Here is the itinerary. The hotels are all booked. The Heritage Tour of the South, just like you dreamed. 2 weeks of total relaxation." I took the papers. My fingers, accustomed to quality documentation, immediately felt something was wrong. It was ordinary office paper, printed on a home printer. No glossy brochures from a travel agency, no letterhead with watermarks, no payment receipts. "This tour costs nearly $3,000, I noted calmly, scanning the list of cities: Charleston, Savannah, New Orleans. "Darnell, a week ago you asked me for $100 to change the oil in your car, claiming you had temporary liquidity issues. Where did this generosity come from?" Darnell froze for a second. I saw a muscle twitch in his jaw, a sure sign he was frantically searching for an excuse. "Ma, come on, you are hurting my feelings." He smiled broadly, but the smile did not touch his eyes. His eyes remained cold and calculating. "A deal came through. A big one. I decided to give my mother a gift. You have carried us for so many years. Let me be a good son." A deal, I thought. His last deal ended with me having to buy his debt from collectors. But aloud, I said nothing. I simply nodded, neatly folding the printout and putting it in my purse. "Thank you," I said in an even tone. "This is very unexpected." I put on my trench coat and adjusted my scarf in front of the mirror. In the reflection, I saw not just an elderly woman going on vacation. I saw a person used to checking every comma in a contract. And right now, in this scene of Family Idol, the commas were not in their right places. Why were they rushing so much? Why was the Uber called half an hour earlier than needed? Why was Keisha, who usually did not get up before noon, already dressed up with full makeup at 8 in the morning? I turned to grab my bag and intercepted Darnell's gaze. He was not looking at me. He was looking over my shoulder, down the hallway, to where my antique mahogany secretary desk stood. This desk had been passed down to me from my grandmother. It was massive, reliable, and always locked. The key hung around my neck on a thin chain hidden under my blouse. Inside the desk, I kept neither money nor jewelry. There lay something more precious than gold: property deeds, the title to this apartment, documents for the lake house in a prestigious county, and, most importantly, the deed to the commercial warehouse complex I rented out. Those warehouses fed our entire family, allowing Darnell to play businessman and Keisha to change outfits. My son's gaze was not just curious, it was predatory, appraising. One does not look at Mama's furniture that way. One looks that way at a safe, the code to which is about to be in one's hands. "I will leave the apartment keys with you," I said, watching their reaction. "The plants need watering every other day, especially the fiddle leaf fig." Yes, of course, Ma, do not worry," Darnell answered quickly, and poorly concealed relief sounded in his voice. "We will water everything. We will control everything. You just turn off your phone more often, take a break from calls. They say the reception is bad out on the Sea Islands." "Reception is bad," I noted to myself. Another piece of the puzzle. They want me unreachable. I picked up the suitcase. It was light. Too light for a 2-week trip. "Well, God be with you," I said. They did not even come out to walk me to the car. Darnell cited an important call, and Keisha suddenly had a headache. They closed the door behind me with such haste, as if they were afraid I would change my mind and return. I heard the lock click. Not one turn, but two. I walked out of the building into the cool morning sun. The Uber was at the curb. The driver was checking his phone to the side, but my attention was not drawn to him. My professional gaze, trained for years to notice discrepancies in reports, automatically scanned the courtyard. Everything was as usual: the playground, benches, parked cars of residents. But around the corner of the building, almost hidden by lilac bushes, stood a black SUV. I knew this car. In our part of Atlanta, not many people drove such expensive vehicles with personalized plates. It was the Lexus of Attorney Calloway, a private lawyer with a reputation as someone who could close a deal of any complexity if the price was high enough. His office was on the other side of town. What was the crooked lawyer's car doing at my building at 8 in the morning on a Saturday? My heart skipped a beat, but my face remained calm. I did not allow myself to stop or show confusion. I simply recorded this fact, just as I recorded a shortage in the warehouse. Darnell, Keisha, the strange gift, the glance at the desk, the request to turn off the phone, and now the lawyer hiding around the corner like a vulture waiting for the prey to leave the nest. The picture was coming together, and I did not like it at all. I slowly headed toward the taxi, feeling a cold, angry certainty growing inside. They thought they were sending Mama on vacation. They thought I was an old, tired woman who would be grateful for any sign of attention. They were mistaken. I am not a victim. I am an auditor. And I had just started my most important audit. The driver opened the trunk. I had already lifted my foot to step toward the car when I suddenly felt someone firmly grab my elbow. It was not just a touch. It was a gesture of desperation. I turned sharply. Before me stood Ms. Hattie Purnell, my neighbor from the first floor. She was in a housecoat thrown over her nightgown. Her gray hair was disheveled, her chest heaving heavily as if she had run a marathon. Ms. Hattie never allowed herself to go outside looking like that. She was a proud woman, despite her modest pension as a retired postal worker. 3 years ago, I had paid for her granddaughter's surgery when the insurance refused to cover it. Ms. Hattie had tried to kiss my hands then, but I sternly stopped it, saying, "One good turn deserves another. Someday you will help me." It seemed that day had come. Ms. Hattie looked back at the windows of my apartment, then at the black SUV around the corner, and her eyes widened with horror. "Lucille," she whispered, squeezing my sleeve with white-knuckled fingers, "do not dare get in that car. Do not dare go to the station." "Hattie, what happened?" I asked quietly but firmly, feeling a steel spring tightening inside me. "I heard them," she hissed, gasping for air. "Last night on the patio under the windows, Darnell and Keisha, they thought no one was around. Lucille, they did not buy you a vacation package. They were discussing, Lord have mercy." She stumbled, tears in her eyes. "What were they discussing? Hattie, speak." "They said as soon as you get on that bus, there is no turning back, that the tour is just a diversion. They are waiting for the notary, Lucille. They are going to break into your desk. They were talking about some general power of attorney and how you will not return to this apartment as the owner." The world around me did not collapse. It did not go dark. On the contrary, everything became crystal clear, sharp, piercing. The sounds of the street became louder, the colors brighter. I looked at the windows of my home. Behind the sheer curtains, a shadow flickered. They were watching. They were waiting for the taxi to leave. "Quickly!" I commanded, seizing the initiative. My voice sounded just like it did at board meetings, a tone that brooked no objections. "We are going to your place through the back entrance so the driver does not see where I went." I turned to the driver, who had already begun tapping impatiently on the roof of the car. "The trip is canceled," I threw at him, shoving a bill I pulled from my pocket into his hand. "Leave empty." "But the app says," he began. "Drive!" I barked so sharply that he instantly slammed the trunk and jumped behind the wheel. The car tore off. I grabbed my light suitcase and, without looking back, dove into the dark service entrance, following Miss Hattie. The game had begun. Only my son forgot one important rule. Before dividing the skin of a bear you have not killed, you should make sure the bear is actually hibernating. And I had just woken up. We entered Ms. Hattie's apartment, and the heavy metal door cut off the sounds of the outside world. The click of the lock sounded like a gunshot. The familiar smell of peppermint tea, old books, and lavender hit my nose. Ms. Hattie leaned her back against the door, sliding down it. Her hands were still trembling. "Lord, Lucille, if I hadn't gone out—" Her voice broke. I did not comfort her. Now was not the time for sentiment. I carefully placed the suitcase in the corner, took off my trench coat, and hung it on the rack as neatly as if I had arrived for a business meeting, not fled my own home. "Wash your face, Hattie," I said dryly, "and put the kettle on. I need facts, verbatim. What exactly did you hear?" I walked into the kitchen, small, cramped, filled with jars of preserves, the complete opposite of my sterile, modern kitchen that Keisha hated so much. I sat on a stool by the window. Through the thick curtains, I could see the edge of my building's entrance. The taxi was gone. The lawyer's black SUV was still standing around the corner like a lurking beast. Miss Hattie entered, wiping her face with a towel. She was still pale, but the hysteria was receding before my icy calm. "They were sitting on the patio," she began, putting the kettle on the stove. Her hands were shaking. The lid clattered. "Last night I went out to the balcony to take down some laundry. It was quiet, perfect acoustics. Keisha spoke loudest. She laughed. She said, 'Finally, the old hag will be gone. 2 weeks is enough for us to transfer everything.'" I looked at my hands. A neat manicure, not a single age spot. The hands of a woman who keeps herself in shape. "And Darnell?" I asked. "What did my son say?" Ms. Hattie lowered her eyes. He said, the main thing is that Calloway doesn't mess up the backdating. He said, Mom will return not as the owner, but as a vegetable." "Lucille, they were talking about some diagnosis. Allegedly, you have dementia, that you are not aware of your actions, that you need to be sent to a closed facility upstate immediately after the tour. The bus wasn't even supposed to bring you back to the city." Something snapped inside me. The thin, invisible thread connecting mother and child stretched and broke with a dull ring. Dementia. Vegetable. They didn't just want my money. That I could understand. Greed is eternal. They wanted to take away my mind, my identity. They planned to declare me incompetent to justify theft. My own son, whom I taught the multiplication table, whom I pulled out of trouble, was ready to bury me alive in a mental institution just to avoid paying debts. I did not cry. Tears are water, and water erodes the foundation. Right now, I needed concrete. I felt a strange lightness. It was liberation. No more need to find excuses for his actions. No more thinking, he's just unlucky, or he's good, it's just his wife's influence. No, before me was an enemy, a dangerous, unprincipled enemy who knew my weak spots. But he forgot who taught him everything he knows, and he fatally underestimated my main asset, my brain. "Turn off the kettle, Hattie," I said. "No tea." I took out my phone. The screen lit up with a notification. "Ma, did you board? Text me when you leave." I swiped the message away without reading it. My fingers habitually dialed a number I had known by heart for 20 years. Otis Booker. Everyone called him Sarge, the manager of my warehouse complex. A man of the old school, former military, devoted to me not out of fear, but conscience. We had gone through the corporate raids of the 90s, through recessions and crises together. The rings went on for a long time. This was unlike Otis. He always picked up after the second ring. Finally, the connection was established. "Ms. Lucille," Otis's voice sounded hollow, almost a whisper. In the background, there was noise, the sound of binders being moved, loud voices. "Hello, Otis," I said in my work tone, calm, low, allowing no panic. "I cannot speak long. I have only one question for you. Check the visitor log. Did Darnell appear at the office today?" Silence hung in the receiver. Heavy, viscous silence that told me more than any words. I heard Otis breathing heavily. "Otis," I hurried him. "Ms. Lucille." He spoke very quietly, apparently covering the receiver with his hand. "Where are you right now? Are you safe?" "I am in a secure location. Answer the question." He didn't just appear. Otis lowered his voice to a barely distinguishable whisper. "He is here right now. He arrived 10 minutes ago, barged into your office, demanding the keys to the safe with the incorporation documents." I gripped the phone until my knuckles turned white. So, they are acting in parallel, breaking into the apartment and seizing the office simultaneously. Blitzkrieg. "Kick him out, Otis. Call security. He has no authority. My signature is the only one that carries weight." "I can't." Despair sounded in the old manager's voice. "Ms. Lucille, he isn't alone. He has a lawyer with him and another woman." "What woman? Keisha?" "No, a stranger, large, in a gray suit. She showed papers, Ms. Lucille. They have court stamps. She claims she is your appointed guardian." The world around me narrowed to the size of the phone speaker. "Guardian?" I repeated, feeling cold rage flooding my veins instead of blood. "Yes, she says that due to your acute health condition, asset management passes to her until further notice. Darnell is already opening your computer. They are changing passwords. Ms. Lucille, they are changing the bank access codes right now." I looked out the window. The notary's black SUV started moving and slowly drove away from my building. Of course, they didn't need to break into the desk in the apartment anymore. They went to the bank. They forged a court decision. This was no longer just theft. This was war. And they had just made their main mistake. They decided I was already dead. "Listen to me carefully, Otis," I said in an icy tone that made Miss Hattie in the corner of the kitchen pull her head into her shoulders. "Do nothing. Do not argue with them. Give them the keys. Let them think they have won. But turn on the recording on the cameras in the conference room, sound and video, and save it to an external drive. Do you understand me?" "Understood," exhaled Otis. "I will call back." I pressed end call. My gaze fell on a kitchen knife that Miss Hattie had forgotten to clear from the table. It was sharp, shiny. I carefully moved it aside. "What happened?" whispered Miss Hattie. I rose from the stool. My movements were precise and economical. "They think I have lost my mind, Hattie. Well then, it is time to show them how my sick mind works." I took a notepad and pen from my purse. I needed a plan. The first item was simple. I needed to disappear for real. The guest room in Ms. Hattie's apartment was tiny, cluttered with boxes of old clothes and stacks of garden and gun magazines. But I didn't need space. I needed a table, an outlet, and silence. I cleared the surface of an old writing desk, shoving aside a stack of dusty books. I took my laptop out of the suitcase. My old but reliable ThinkPad, which Darnell considered junk and didn't even think to take. That was his first mistake. This antique held all the electronic keys, duplicate databases, and, most importantly, access to my personal cloud storage, the existence of which my son did not even suspect. I opened a new document. My fingers habitually settled on the keyboard. I was not writing a letter. I was not writing a complaint. I was drafting a legal document, a revocation of power of attorney. My experience as a CFO whispered, "Paper is a shield, but a properly drafted paper is a sword." I typed quickly, formulating every sentence with surgical precision. I revoked any powers of attorney issued in the name of Darnell Vance Mercer and Keisha Finch Mercer, starting from today and going back 10 years. I knew legally you cannot revoke retroactively, but I added a clause about fraudulent actions and misrepresentation, which gave me grounds to challenge any transactions made by them during this period. Then I opened my banking app. Not the big national bank where I had my pension card, which Darnell had surely already blocked through his guardian. No, this was an account at a small credit union I had opened 5 years ago when I sold my late husband's garage. Darnell threw a tantrum back then, demanding I invest that money in his crypto farm, but I told him the money went to pay off old debts. He believed it. He always believed what he wanted to hear. There was a sum in the account sufficient for war. I transferred all available funds from my main accounts and savings to this reserve account. The transaction went through in seconds. I saw the number zero out in the app Darnell might have access to. I imagined his face when he tried to withdraw money at an ATM and saw the message, "Insufficient funds." The satisfaction was quiet, almost physically tangible, like a sip of cold water in the heat. "Lucille, come here," called Ms. Hattie from the balcony. Her voice trembled with excitement. I closed the laptop and went out to the balcony. Ms. Hattie lived on the second floor, and her balcony faced the courtyard. But through the gap between the buildings, you could see the parking lot of the neighboring complex and, further out, the road leading toward the county line where our dacha, our lake house, was located. The lake house was on the edge of the city, in an old development now squeezed between new constructions. From Ms. Hattie's balcony, if you knew where to look, you could see the shingled roof of my house and the gate through the trees. I took the old opera glasses from Ms. Hattie. The lenses were cloudy, but the image was sufficient. A silver crossover pulled up to the gate of my lake house. Darnell's car. 2 people got out. Darnell in an unbuttoned shirt, cheerful, waving his hands, and Keisha in a short summer sundress that would be appropriate on a beach in Miami, but not in a residential suburb. They were laughing. Keisha held a bottle of champagne, Dom Perignon. I recognized the label. That bottle cost half my monthly pension. "Celebrating," whispered Ms. Hattie, gripping the balcony railing. "Like at a wake. Lord forgive them." "No, Hattie," I corrected, adjusting the focus of the binoculars. "They are celebrating victory. They think the bus is already 100 miles out of the city and reception is lost. They think I am looking out the window at birch trees and dreaming of sweet tea." Darnell opened the gate with his remote. They walked into the yard like they owned the place. Keisha immediately headed to my roses, the English varieties I had been cultivating for 10 years. She plucked a flower, carelessly, roots and all, smelled it, and threw it on the path. I felt a prick of pain, but immediately suppressed it. Roses will grow back, but what they intend to do with my life will be harder to fix. "Look who else," Ms. Hattie nudged me with her elbow. Another car pulled up to the gate, a huge black SUV looking like a tank. A man got out. Tall, dour, in an expensive cashmere coat. He wasn't smiling. He surveyed my fence, the house, the lot, as if he were already calculating how many cubic yards of concrete would be needed to pave everything over for a foundation. I recognized him instantly. It was Mr. Sterling, a local developer, a man called the Bulldozer. He specialized in buying up old residential lots, tearing down houses, and building soulless strip malls or elite high-rises in their place. His methods were known to everyone. If owners didn't agree to sell, their houses suddenly caught fire, or property deeds got lost in the archives. "Sterling," I exhaled. Darnell ran out to meet him, practically bowing. He extended a hand, which Sterling shook with the disgust of a man touching something sticky. Keisha immediately jumped up with glasses. They went into the house. So, not just the business. Darnell decided to sell not only the warehouses, but also the lake house. The family nest my father built. The house where Darnell took his first steps. He was selling it to the bulldozer, a man who would wipe the memory of our family off the face of the earth in a week. I lowered the binoculars. My breathing was even, pulse calm. Inside me, a calculator started working, calculating options. Sterling does not get involved with distressed assets. He needs a clean deal to then resell the land with a maximum markup. If he is here, it means Darnell convinced him that I am not a problem, that the documents are in hand, and the crazy old woman is securely neutralized. "Hattie," I said, returning to the room, "I need your phone. I can't call from mine. They might track the signal." "Of course, take it." She handed me an old flip phone. I dialed Otis's number. He answered instantly, as if he was waiting. "Otis, they are at the lake house. With Sterling." "With Sterling?" Unfeigned horror sounded in the manager's voice. "Ms. Lucille, if Sterling is involved, it means they want to demolish the warehouses too. He has had his eye on our territory for a long time." "I know. Listen to me. I need you to do one thing. In my office, in the bottom drawer of the desk, there is a folder marked Archive 2010. Inside are old utility blueprints. Among them is a sheet where the city sewer main is marked, running directly under Warehouse 3. I remember that one, but there's nothing there. The line was capped back in the 80s. "Sterling doesn't know that," I interrupted, "but he knows you cannot build over an active sewer main or utility easement. It's a protected zone. If he sees that plan, he will realize that building a shopping center there is impossible." "You want me to slip him that plan?" "No, I want you to accidentally leave that folder on the table in the conference room when they come to sign papers. Let it lie in plain sight. Put a note on top. For the district attorney, urgent." I heard Otis chuckle. "Understood. Will do." "And one more thing, Otis. Find me the contact of that journalist who wrote about Sterling's defrauded investors last year. I think his name is Solomon." "I'll find him." "Ms. Lucille, are you sure you can handle this? There are many of them, and you are alone." I looked at my reflection in the dark screen of the turned-off TV. Gray hair gathered in a strict bun, a stubborn fold near my lips. "I am not alone, Otis. I have you, I have Hattie, and I have something they don't." "What is that?" "The truth," I answered and hung up. It was the first pawn move, but this pawn opened the way for the queen. Sterling is a predator, but he is a cautious predator. Once he smells rot in the documents, he will tear Darnell apart himself without my help. I just need to nudge the situation a little. I returned to the laptop. The cursor blinked on the screen in the document revoking the power of attorney. I added one more paragraph. A copy is being sent to the city prosecutor's office and the board of notaries. Print, sign, send via courier. I looked at my watch. It was only 2 in the afternoon. My bus should have been passing through Macon by now. Darnell and Keisha were drinking champagne on my veranda, and I was sitting in someone else's apartment preparing a surprise they would remember for the rest of their lives. The game moved to the middle game. My phone vibrated on the table, breaking the silence. I threw a quick glance at the screen. A message from Darnell. "Hope the bus is comfortable, Ma. The seats recline. Turn off your phone and relax. You deserve it. Love you." I smirked. You deserve it. What irony. He had no idea how right he was. I truly deserved a rest. A rest from his lies, from his parasitism, from the eternal fear for his future. But I would arrange this rest for myself, and it would be nothing like what my son planned. I sat not in the soft seat of a tour bus, but on a hard chair in the reading room of the city archives. Around me, it smelled of dust and old paper, a smell that always calmed me. Order reigned here. Every document had its place, its number, its history, and this history could not be rewritten at the whim of an ambitious dropout. I quickly typed a reply. Resting my soul, son. Signal fading. Don't worry. I pressed send and immediately turned off the phone. Let him think I am an obedient old lady, meekly following his instructions. The calmer he is, the more mistakes he will make. Ms. Lucille, the archivist Anna approached me, a woman of my age with glasses on a chain. We had known each other for 20 years, back from my days at the plant. Found your folder, barely dug it out. It was listed in deep storage. She placed a heavy folder with yellowed strings in front of me. Warehouse Complex Number 4, Primary Documentation, 1998. Thank you, Anna. I nodded gratefully. You are saving me. Oh, come on, she waved her hand. What happened? You look like you are going to war. Almost, Anna, almost. I need a certified copy of the privatization deed and the land survey plan. Urgent. While Anna processed the copies, I flipped through the pages. Here is the deed. Here is my signature. Clear, confident. Here are the seals. No co-owners, no shared participation. Sole ownership. Darnell could forge as many powers of attorney as he wanted, but the original is always stronger than a copy, especially in court. At that moment, as Otis later told me, a scene worthy of a bad soap opera was playing out in the warehouse office. Otis called Darnell as we agreed. He put it on speakerphone so the conversation would be recorded by the surveillance cameras. Mr. Mercer? Otis's voice sounded anxious but firm. We have a problem. The system isn't letting the new lease agreement through. It requires confirmation from the owner. The central server is blocking the operation. Darnell, who at that moment, judging by the background noise, was at the lake house and clearly already tipsy, laughed. What central server, Sarge? Did you overheat? Mom is shaking over bumps on a bus somewhere near Macon. There is no signal there and won't be for the next 2 weeks. I told you, I am the boss here now. Enter my code, I tried. Mr. Mercer, it's not going through, says access error, contact owner. Maybe we should call Ms. Lucille? Are you mocking me? The son's voice became irritated. I told you in plain English, do not disturb. The old lady is resting. Let her look at the steeples and eat pralines. It's bad for her to worry. Just bypass the system. You know how. Disable the signature verification. That is a violation of security protocol, Mr. Mercer. If the audit finds out... I don't give a damn about the audit, barked Darnell. By the time she gets back, everything here will be different. The warehouses will become a shopping center, and Sterling and I will be drinking cognac in the Caribbean. Do what I say, or write your resignation. He hung up. The old lady is eating pralines. Don't give a damn about the audit. Otis saved the recording. Every word, every intonation of contempt. It was not just rudeness. It was proof of intentional abuse of authority and pressure on staff. I walked out of the archives with certified copies in my bag. The sun was already setting, painting the city in alarming crimson tones. The next item on my list was a meeting with a lawyer Ms. Hattie recommended. But first, I needed to check one more detail. Otis had sent me a photo of the business card of that woman, the guardian who came with Darnell. Regina Hooks, Legal Services, Guardianship and Care. The name seemed vaguely familiar. Hooks. Hooks. Where had I heard that name? I went into an internet cafe, sat at a corner table, and typed the name into the search engine. The first links were standard: a legal consultation website, reviews suspiciously enthusiastic and generic. But I scrolled further to the second page of results, and then it hit me like an electric shock. An article in the city newspaper from 5 years ago. Scandal at the Hope Charity Foundation. Chief accountant accused of embezzlement. I opened the article. The photo, though blurry, showed her, Regina Hooks. Only back then she was a brunette and went by the name Regina King. I remembered, Lord, how could I forget? Reggie King. She worked in our payroll department at the plant in the early 2000s, a quiet gray mouse who always complained about a small salary and a sick husband. I caught her padding the uniform allowance sheets. The amounts were small, but regular. I didn't file a police report. I took pity, fired her by mutual agreement, but with a black mark, no recommendations and no right to hold positions of financial responsibility. So, she changed her last name, dyed her hair, and now calls herself a guardianship specialist. Darnell found her, or she found him. Two losers, two grifters, who decided they found the perfect victim. She knew me, she remembered who fired her, and now this was not just work for money, it was personal revenge. She was helping my son declare me incompetent, enjoying every moment. I felt not fear, but disgust, as if I had stepped in mud. But with it came understanding. I held a trump card. If a guardian has a criminal record, and the article hinted at a suspended sentence, she cannot legally be a guardian under any circumstances. Any court decision made with her participation would be annulled, and she herself would go to jail for fraud. Darnell, in his haste and greed, didn't even bother to check his accomplice's background. He took the first lawyer he found who agreed to do dirty work without asking questions. "Well done, Darnell," I whispered, looking at the monitor screen. "Some strategist! You brought a rat into our house that I had already kicked out once." I printed the article, folded it neatly, corner to corner. Now I knew their weak spot. The foundation of their plan rested on rotten piles. Knock one out, and everything collapses. I walked out onto the street. The evening air was cool and fresh. I breathed in deeply. "Rest, Mama," I repeated my son's words. "Rest." I headed to the bus stop. I needed to return to Ms. Hattie's, gather all the documents into one folder, and prepare for tomorrow. Tomorrow I would start pulling the strings. They thought I was the past. Old, useless furniture that could be thrown into the dump. But they forgot that antiques sometimes cost more than all the new furniture put together, and are much more durable. Tomorrow they would learn the cost of a mistake. The morning of the next day began not with coffee, but with a meeting in an abandoned parking lot behind the city market. Otis chose the place. There were no cameras here, and the noise of cars drowned out any conversation. He arrived in his old Ford truck, got out looking around, and handed me a thick folder. His face was gray, deep shadows lay under his eyes. "Ms. Lucille," he didn't look me in the eye. I didn't know how to tell you this over the phone. This is beyond the pale." I took the folder. It was heavy. "Show me, Otis. I am ready for anything." We sat in his truck. Otis turned on the heater, but I was shaking with a chill that came from within. I opened the folder. On top lay the draft lease agreement with Sterling. I expected this, but beneath it lay a document that took my breath away. It was a loan agreement, a private hard money loan. The amount was astronomical, $500,000. Borrower, Darnell Mercer. Guarantor, Lucille Mercer. My signature was forged crudely, with a trembling hand, but the stamp was real. Apparently, he had finally gotten to my notary stamp. But the scariest part was not the amount. The scariest part was in the collateral column. Land plot and residential building at address. Warehouse complex, units A, B, C. "That's not all," Otis said quietly, seeing me freeze. "Turn the page." I turned it, and the world momentarily tilted. It was a copy of a death certificate. Name, Lucille Mercer. Date of death, October 12th. That is, tomorrow. Cause of death, acute heart failure. I looked at my name typed in the morning frame, at the date, tomorrow. "Where did you get this?" My voice sounded foreign, mechanical. "I found it in the trash bin of his computer," answered Otis. He scanned the draft. Apparently Hooks prepared a template. "They intended, Ms. Lucille, they intended to file your death paperwork retroactively or make it happen." as soon as you were gone, to avoid the gift tax and immediately inherit. And then, when you return, I don't know, maybe they hoped that you really would, from a heart attack when you found out. I closed the folder. Slowly, carefully. So I was right. This is not just greed. This is not just a desire to live beautifully. My son was not just stealing from me. He was burying me. Legally, I was supposed to die tomorrow. He had already prepared the paper. He had already reconciled with this thought. For him, I was already dead. An annoying obstacle that needs to be erased with an eraser from the documents to get the money. Something clicked inside me and went quiet. The last tiniest spark of maternal pity, which perhaps was still smoldering somewhere at the bottom of my soul, went out. Only a cold, black void remained, and in this void, like a steel blade, shone one thought: destroy. I will not pity him. I will not raise him. It is too late to raise him. Now I will judge him. Who is the lender? I asked, looking at the loan agreement. It says Apex Capital LLC, Otis replied. But you know who stands behind that. I knew. Apex was just a screen. Behind it stood a group that ran half the pawn shops and predatory lending operations in the city. The Bishop's crew, serious people who do not go to court. They resolve issues differently. Darnell took money from gangsters, $500,000 secured by property that does not belong to him and backed by the death of a mother who is alive. He is an idiot, I stated without emotion. He is a clinical idiot. He thinks he will trick them just like he tricked me. He thinks Sterling will buy the land quickly, and he will pay back the debt with interest, explained Otis. But Sterling is dragging his feet, checking documents, and the meter at Apex is ticking. The interest rate, see for yourself. I looked at the rate, 5% per week, with a 10% daily penalty for default. If Sterling backs out of the deal, Darnell will be left alone with a debt growing geometrically, and creditors who do not accept excuses about mom on a bus. Thank you, Otis. I squeezed his hand. You did more than you had to. Now leave. Take a vacation day. You shouldn't be at the warehouse tomorrow. And you? I am staying. Tomorrow is an important day for me. The day of my death. I chuckled bitterly. Must act the part. I got out of the truck. The wind whipped the hem of my coat. I felt not like an old woman, but like a general before a decisive battle. The plan had changed. Simply getting my stuff back? That is now too little. Simply punishing? Not enough. I must allow him to fall into the pit he dug for me. I won't push him. I will simply remove the hand he is holding on to. I took out Miss Hattie's phone, found a number in the contact book that I hoped I would never have to use. But life dictates its own rules. It was the number of the receptionist for a very influential man, who back in the wild days was connected to those same shadow figures, but had since legitimized and become a respected businessman. We overlapped professionally. He respected me for my honesty and competence. Good afternoon, I said to the secretary. Tell Mr. Victor that Lucille Vance Mercer is calling. Tell him I have information about collateral they are trying to sell him. Tell him the merchandise is defective. I knew this information would reach Apex Capital faster than Darnell could finish his morning coffee. Shadow lenders really dislike being conned, especially when the collateral is air, and the guarantor is a dead soul who is quite alive and well. Darnell wanted to play grown-up games. Well, welcome to the adult world, son. Here, mistakes aren't paid for with Mama's pension. Here, they are paid for in blood. I turned and walked away from the parking lot. My gait was firm, back straight. I didn't look back. The past remained behind in the folder with the fake death certificate. Ahead was the future, and that future belonged to me. Ms. Hattie's apartment was quiet, but a storm roared inside me. A cold, calculating storm. I sat in front of the laptop, the screen displaying a feed from the surveillance camera installed on the veranda of my lake house. I installed this camera 3 years ago when the neighbors had a lawnmower stolen. Darnell knew about it, but as always, forgot, or decided it was long broken, like everything that didn't bring him immediate profit. On the screen, I saw them. Darnell and Keisha sat at a table covered in papers. Nearby stood an open bottle of cognac. They looked tense, but pleased. Darnell was saying something excitedly, waving a pen. It was time for the final test. I knew he would fail it. I knew it as surely as I knew that 2 times 2 is 4. But I needed proof. Not for the court, not for the police, but for myself. So that when it was all over, I would never for a second regret what I did. I played an audio recording on my phone. Station noise, the hum of a crowd, a dispatcher's announcement, the sound of suitcase wheels. I brought the handset to my lips, took a deep breath, and dialed my son's number. The rings went on for a long time. Finally, he answered. Yeah. The voice was irritated, impatient. Darnell, I made my voice tremble. Darnell, baby. Mom. He was clearly surprised. Why are you calling? I asked you not to. I'm busy. I have a meeting. Son, I'm in trouble. I spoke quickly, disjointedly, imitating panic. I got off at a stop in Savannah to buy water, and the bus left. It left without me. My bag stayed on it. My phone was in my pocket, but my wallet, ID, pills, everything is there. I paused to let him realize the situation. His mother, an elderly woman, alone in a strange city, without money or medication, on the street. Man, you are something else, Ma. There was no fear in his voice, only annoyance. How could you get left behind by a bus? Are you a child? Darnell, I'm scared. It's getting dark. I'm at the station. I don't have a dime. Please transfer me $100. I'll rent a room or buy a ticket back. Please, son, I feel sick. My heart hurts. I watched the screen. Darnell rolled his eyes. He covered the receiver with his hand and said something to Keisha. Keisha made a face and waved her hand as if shooing away a pesky fly. Ma, listen. His voice became hard, businesslike. I can't right now. My card is zeroed out. All the money is in rotation, you know that. The deal of the century is on fire. $100, Darnell, I begged. That's pennies to you right now. I'm freezing. I don't have $100, he barked. And I don't have time to deal with you. Go to the police. Let them find your bus. Or sit at the station until morning. Nothing will happen to you. You're not made of sugar. You won't melt. But son, that's it, Ma. Don't burden me with your problems. It's your own fault. Handle it. He hung up. Silence hung in the receiver. I slowly lowered the phone, turned off the station noise recording. On the laptop screen, I saw Darnell throw the phone on the table and laugh. He poured himself some cognac. What was that? Asked Keisha, stretching lazily. The sound from the camera was excellent. Oh, the old lady has completely lost her mind, snorted Darnell, taking a sip. Got left behind by the bus, asking for money, wants $100. Yeah, right, dream on. He chuckled, pleased with his joke. Imagine we are moving millions here, and she is counting pennies there. It's okay, good for character building. Let her get used to the new life. Soon even $100 will be happiness to her. Keisha giggled. You are cruel, Darnell. I like it. I am not cruel. I am pragmatic. She has lived her life. Now it is our time. I looked at them. At my son, whom I carried in my arms when he had chickenpox, whom I bought the best toys for, denying myself everything, whom I pulled out of debts by selling family jewelry. He had just left me to die at a bus station. Virtually, but to him, it was reality. He believed I was in trouble, and his reaction was laughter and indifference. Test complete. Result? Negative. The patient is hopeless. I saved the call recording and the video file from the camera. Now I had the complete set. The moral character of a loving son documented in HD quality. Time to snap the trap shut. I took another phone out of my purse, a simple burner with a prepaid SIM card bought at a corner store. No traces leading to me. I dialed a number I found on the internet. It was the hotline for that same microfinance organization, the front for the loan sharks. But I knew the call would be redirected to security, Apex's enforcers. Listening, answered a hoarse male voice. I have information for management, I said, changing my voice to be lower and rougher. Regarding borrower Darnell Mercer and his collateral. Who is speaking? A well-wisher. Your client is trying to scam you. The collateral documents are fake. The owner is alive, well, and in the city. Moreover, a freeze has been placed on the property by the prosecutor an hour ago. If you give him the cash, you will never see it again. Source? The voice tensed. Check the registry of notarial actions. The power of attorney was revoked yesterday. The death certificate is a forgery. You are being played for fools. I hung up, took out the SIM card, and snapped it in half. I knew how these people worked. They don't need courts. They don't need long proceedings. They need their money and guarantees. And when they find out someone tried to trick them with fake documents, their reaction will be instant. Darnell wanted to play with fire. Well, he forgot that fire doesn't care who lit it. It just burns everything in its path. I looked at the screen. Darnell was pouring cognac again, telling Keisha something cheerfully. He didn't know yet that his phone number was already on a blacklist, and soon a car would pull up to the lake house gate that wasn't the one he was expecting. "Have a nice evening, son," I whispered. "Enjoy it. It is your last evening as a millionaire." I closed the laptop. Tomorrow would be the finale. Tomorrow I would step out of the shadows, and it would be an exit worthy of applause. The night before the battle is always the quietest. I spent it not in Ms. Hattie's apartment, but in a place I knew better than any home, in the small storage room of my warehouse complex's archive. Otis let me in through the service entrance when the guard changed. Here, among shelves of documents, it smelled of dust and calm. I slept on a fold-out cot, covered with an old plaid blanket, and it was the deepest sleep I'd had in years. The sleep of a person who knows that tomorrow, everything will end. The morning met me with a gray steel dawn. I freshened up in the tiny restroom, a white blouse, a strict black blazer, a string of pearls. No sloppiness. Today I had to look flawless, not like a victim, but like the boss. At 8:00 a.m., Otis silently entered the storage room. Behind him was Ms. Hattie, pale but determined, clutching her ID. And the third person, Attorney Arnold, the lawyer I hired, a man with the reputation of a pit bull. If he latches on, he doesn't let go. "Everything is ready, Ms. Lucille," Otis said quietly. "I have the original articles of incorporation. The camera footage is copied onto 3 drives. Staff is briefed. No one knows anything. Everyone is working as usual." "Police?" I asked, adjusting my cuff. "Detective Barnes will be here by 10. He reviewed the materials we submitted yesterday. He said there is enough evidence for 3 criminal cases, but he needs to catch them in the act, at the moment of signing." "Excellent," I nodded. "Hattie, do you remember what to say?" "I remember, Lucille," the neighbor nodded. "Every word. About the patio, the conspiracy, the vegetable comment. I won't be afraid." We were ready, my small army. People Darnell considered pawns or didn't notice at all were now standing shoulder to shoulder, ready to bring down his house of cards. At 9:30, Darnell pulled up to the main entrance. I watched him on the security monitor. He got out of an Uber, apparently deciding not to flash his car before creditors, dressed in a new suit, shining like a new penny. Next to him scurried Keisha, also dressed up, with a folder under her arm. And of course, Regina Hooks, the guardian with the stone face of a professional executioner. They walked into the lobby confidently, laughing loudly. Darnell slapped the security guard on the shoulder, but the man only nodded silently and looked away. "What's up with them?" Darnell asked Keisha as they passed the receptionist, who suddenly became engrossed in her monitor, not even saying hello. "They're all asleep today, afraid of the new management," Keisha snorted. "They smell that a new broom sweeps clean." Darnell walked up to the door of my office. He now considered it his own. He touched his keycard to the reader. Silence. The red light blinked and went out. Darnell frowned, tried again. Silence again. "What the hell?" He yanked the handle. Locked. "Sarge, Otis, where are you? Why isn't the card working?" Otis walked out of the hallway. His face was impenetrable. "System glitch, Mr. Mercer," he answered calmly. "There was a storm yesterday. Evidently the controller is buggy. A technician is looking at it now. Go to the conference room for now, it's open. Mr. Sterling will be here soon." Darnell exhaled irritably. "Everything is half-assed with you people. Fine. Coffee for me in the conference room. Make it strong." They went into the boardroom. I saw Darnell getting nervous. He kept checking his phone, adjusting his tie. Keisha laid out documents on the table. Regina sat motionless as a statue. The atmosphere in the office was electrified. Employees whispered in corners, but fell silent as soon as one of the Trinity looked into the corridor. Darnell felt it. He felt the air become thick, viscous. He looked around like an animal sensing smoke, but not seeing fire. "Why is Sterling late?" He looked at his watch. "Already 10. "Traffic, probably," Keisha soothed him. "Don't panic. The money is almost in our pocket." At 10:05, Sterling's black SUV pulled up to the building. But he wasn't alone. Following him, an unmarked gray sedan with government plates parked. I smiled at my reflection in the dark glass of the monitor. "It is time," I said. We walked out of the storage room. Quietly, without attracting attention, we went through the service corridor to the back door of the conference room. This door was camouflaged as a wall panel. Only Otis and I knew about it. In the conference room, Sterling was already shaking Darnell's hand. "Well, young man," boomed the developer. "The documents are ready? Originals?" "Of course, Mr. Sterling." Darnell bustled about, laying out papers. "Here is the deed. Here is the general power of attorney. Here is the guardianship council decision. Everything is clean as a whistle." Sterling took the papers. He was in no hurry to sign. He read carefully. Then his eyes fell on the folder Otis had left, the one marked, "Urgent, District Attorney." He frowned. "And where is Ms. Lucille herself?" he suddenly asked, raising a heavy gaze to Darnell. "I would like to ensure she is aware of the deal. It is a significant sum, after all." "Mom." Darnell hesitated for only a second. "Mom is currently undergoing treatment in a closed facility. No contact. Doctors forbade it. You understand age, blood vessels. She barely understands what is happening. For her own good, we took over management. Here is Ms. Hooks, her official guardian. She will confirm." Regina nodded, opening her mouth to utter the rehearsed lie. But at that moment, the door to the conference room opened. Not my secret door, but the main one. 2 men in plain clothes walked into the room. Behind them, 2 more in uniform. Darnell froze with a pen in his hand. The smile slid off his face like a poorly glued mask. "Mr. Sterling," one of the men addressed the developer, showing a badge. "Detective Barnes, Economic Crimes Unit. Apologies for the interruption, but this transaction cannot be completed." "Why is that?" Sterling bristled, though understanding flashed in his eyes. He was a seasoned player and immediately smelled trouble. "Because the subject of the transaction is evidence in a criminal fraud case involving large sums," the detective replied calmly. "And also because the seller has no right to dispose of this property." "What is this nonsense?" squealed Darnell, jumping up from his chair. "I have power of attorney. I have guardianship. Who are you? I will file a complaint." "The power of attorney was revoked by the owner," Barnes cut him off, "and the guardianship was obtained based on forged medical documents and a fake death certificate by the owner." "Owner?" Darnell went white. "What owner? Mom is on a bus. She is incompetent." And then I pressed the button on the wall. The panel silently slid aside. I stepped into the conference room. The silence that hung in the room was deafening. I heard the expensive watch ticking on Sterling's wrist. I heard Keisha's breath hitch. Darnell looked at me as if he saw a ghost. His mouth opened and closed like a fish thrown onto the shore. "Hello, son," I said. My voice was calm, even, icy. "The bus arrived. End of the line." I walked up to the table, never taking my eyes off my son. He backed away until his back hit the wall. "Mom," he whispered. You are here?" "I am here, Darnell. I was always here. I saw every step, heard every word. About the vegetable, about the facility, about how you asked for $100 from a mother you were planning to bury alive. I threw the folder Otis gave me onto the table, the folder with his debts, with the fake certificate of my death. "Checkmate, Darnell," I said. "Game over." Sterling slowly put his pen on the table. He looked at Darnell, then at me, then at the detective, and made the only correct decision. "I have nothing to do with this," he stated, raising his hands. "I was misled. I am ready to testify as a witness." Darnell's gaze darted around the room. He was looking for an exit, but there was no exit. Only people in uniform blocking the doors. Only a mother who was no longer a mother, but a judge. And the void into which he stepped himself. The trap had shut. "You misunderstood everything." Darnell's voice cracked into a falsetto. He peeled himself off the wall and took a step toward me, reaching out his hands in a gesture meant to portray filial pleading, but looking like an attempt to grab a drowning man by the hair. "Mom, listen, it's a mistake. We just wanted to surprise you, optimize taxes. I was taking care of you." I stood motionless, like a rock against which dirty waves break. "Surprise?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "My death certificate is a surprise? A loan from loan sharks against my house's care?" "It's temporary," he jabbered, sweating feverishly. "Just papers, a formality. You know I would never—" "Mom, tell them. Tell them you gave me the go-ahead yourself. You just forgot. Your memory is failing you." He turned to the detective, pointing a finger at me. "She is not all there. You don't understand. She has dementia. She forgets what she did yesterday. I can prove it. Ms. Hooks will confirm." It was his last card, a desperate attempt to play on the very lie they had prepared so carefully. He decided to declare me insane right here, in front of the police and witnesses. I looked at Regina. The guardian sat pale, pressed into her chair. She already understood the game was lost and remained silent, hoping to become invisible. "Dementia, you say?" I smirked. "Well then, let's test my memory." I took my old digital recorder out of my purse and pressed play. In the silence of the conference room, his voice rang out, clear, distinct, soaked in cynicism. "The old lady has completely lost her mind, asking for money, wants $100. Let her sleep at the station, act homeless. Soon even $100 will be happiness to her." And then Keisha's voice. "You are cruel, Darnell. I like it." And Darnell again. "I am not cruel. I am pragmatic. She has lived her life. Now it is our time." Darnell's face broke out in red blotches. Sterling grimaced in disgust, as if the room smelled of sewage. Detective Barnes noted something in his pad. That is edited," squealed Darnell. "It's AI, deepfakes. You can fake any voice now." "And is this also AI?" I laid out the printout of the emails on the table. Letters from his personal email to Calloway, asking to backdate documents, attached with scans of my passport he stole while I slept. Darnell fell silent. He realized he had nothing to cover with. The air around him became thin. He looked back at Keisha, seeking support. And then happened exactly what I expected. The rats began to eat each other. Keisha, who had been sitting quietly until now, suddenly jumped up, her beautiful eyes filled with angry tears. "It's all him!" she screamed, pointing at her husband with a manicured finger. "I told him no. I begged him to stop. He forced me. He said if I didn't help, he would throw me out on the street. I was afraid of him. He is a tyrant. He hit me." Darnell's eyes bulged. "What kind of garbage are you spewing?" he yelled. "It was your idea. You whined about the fur coat. You found Hooks. You came up with the nursing home scheme." "Liar!" shrieked Keisha. "Officer, I am a victim. I will tell everything. I will make a deal. He planned it all. He hates his mother. He dreamed she would die." The scene was disgusting and beautiful in its repulsiveness. They were drowning each other with the same enthusiasm with which they drank champagne to my death just yesterday. "Enough!" My voice cut through their screams. They fell silent, Breathing heavily, I looked at Keisha. You say he invented it all? And who corresponded with Calloway from the account Kitty92? Who sent him the mock-ups of the fake seals? Who searched the internet for how to induce a heart attack in an elderly person without traces? Keisha turned so pale her foundation looked like a geisha mask. How do you... The IT department at my plant knew how to recover deleted data back when you were walking under the table. I cut her off. I got access to your shared cloud, darling. Your digital footprints are everywhere. You are not a victim, Keisha. You are the brain of this operation. A rotten, greedy brain. Keisha collapsed onto the chair, covering her face with her hands. Sterling stood up. He buttoned his jacket. Ms. Lucille, he said weightily, I offer my apologies. If I had known, my lawyers will contact you. I am ready to discuss compensation for moral damages, just so my name does not appear in the press next to these citizens. The deal is annulled. He walked out without looking at Darnell. Only we remained in the room, the police and the ruins of a family. Darnell stood with his head down, his shoulders slumped. All the gloss flew off him like husks. Before me stood not a successful businessman, but a frightened boy who broke an expensive vase and was now waiting for the belt. Ma, he wheezed, what happens now? Now comes the law, Darnell, I answered. Penal code, fraud committed by an organized group involving large sums, up to 10 years. You're going to send me to jail? He raised eyes full of horror to me. Your own son? Something wavered inside me. It was the hardest moment. The moment when the heart wants to forgive, but the mind knows. Forgiveness now is complicity. No, Darnell, I said quietly. I will not send you to jail. I will withdraw the complaint. His face lit up with hope. Really, Mama? Thank you. I knew it. I will work it off. I will change. Do not interrupt, I cut him off harshly. I will withdraw the complaint. But there is a nuance. The loan you took from Apex, $500,000. I will not challenge it as fraud on my end. I will simply prove that the collateral was invalid. The smile slid off his face. The loan remains on you personally, unsecured. But they will kill me. The bishop, the interest. Those are your problems, Darnell. You wanted to be an adult? Be one. Solve your issues yourself. I am no longer your wallet, not your shield, and not your mother. I turned to the detective. Detective, I am not filing charges for now, but I ask you to document the fact of forgery to protect my property, and with these two, I nodded at my son and daughter-in-law. I will deal with them myself. But what about Hooks? Asked Barnes, nodding at the guardian. Take her, I said. She has a prior record and forgery of state documents. It will be good for her to sit for a while. Regina was led away in handcuffs. Keisha sat staring at one spot. Darnell stood in the middle of the room, realizing that prison would have been salvation for him. In prison, he would be fed and guarded, but in freedom, the loan sharks awaited him with the question, "Where is the money, Darnell?" I walked up to the table, took my documents. Keys to the apartment. I held out my hand. Darnell, with trembling hands, took out the keychain and placed it in my palm. And the lake house. The second set lay next to it. Goodbye, Darnell, I said. I hope you find a way to survive. You have kidneys, a liver. They say they fetch a good price. You are a pragmatist, after all. I turned and walked to the exit. My back was straight, my legs firm. I did not cry. I did what I had to do. I amputated the gangrene to save the rest of the body. The door closed behind me with a quiet click, and only in the corridor did I allow myself to exhale. The air was clean. It no longer smelled of lies. I didn't track Darnell's fate. I only know that he is alive. They say he got a job as a laborer on a construction site somewhere in Alabama, trying to earn at least some money to pay off the interest to the loan sharks. He called me a couple of times from strange numbers, but I didn't pick up. My number is now available only to those who bring peace to my life, not chaos. The warehouses are running. Otis got a promotion and now fully manages operations. I visit once a week just to check reports and drink coffee with him. Ms. Hattie left yesterday. I bought her a package to a spa resort in Arizona. A real one this time, with treatments, baths, and 3 meals a day. When I handed her the envelope, she tried to refuse, cried, but I said, "It is not a gift, Hattie. It is a partner's dividend. You earned every cent." The evening at the lake house turned out cool. It smells of wet pine needles and smoke. Neighbors are burning leaves. I sit on the screened porch, wrapped in a warm wool blanket. On the table next to me steams a cup of tea with thyme. Silence. Before, this silence scared me. It seemed to me that it meant loneliness. Now I know. It is the sound of freedom. No one lies to me. No one looks at me like a wallet. No one waits for my death. I am the mistress of my land, my time, my life. I reach out to the mantelpiece. There lies a piece of paper folded in 4, that same printout of the dream tour my son handed me in the hallway. Heritage tour, luxury, all inclusive. I slowly, with pleasure, tear the paper, first in half, then again, and again, turning the lie into small confetti. I throw the scraps into the fireplace. The fire greedily licks the paper. A bright flame flares up for a second, illuminating the room, and immediately subsides, turning into gray ash. I take a sip of tea. It is hot, tart, and surprisingly delicious. "Have a good rest, Lucille," I say to myself, and for the first time in many years, I am truly resting. Well, my dear listeners, that is the story. Harsh, perhaps? Just? I believe so, but I am very interested to know your opinion. Do you think Lucille did the right thing? Should she have pitied her son at the last moment, bought out his debt, given him one more 101st chance? Or was she right to let him rake up the consequences of his own meanness? After all, they say a mother should forgive everything. But where is the line beyond which forgiveness becomes encouragement of evil? Write in the comments what you would have done in her place. Could you have so coolly snapped the trap on your own child? And do you want to know how Darnell's fate turned out? Did he manage to swim out or go to the bottom? If I see many requests, perhaps we will peek into this story one more time. If the story touched you, made you think, or simply gave you pleasure, please support my work with a like. It will take you a second, but it will be very pleasing to me. And of course, subscribe to the channel so as not to miss new life stories. We wish you all the best.